I try not to speak for a day or 2 or 3, and just to go back and find the silence that was in me then. And I say to myself, how many of us did not live and simply vanish?
Elie Wiesel was only 15 years old when he was first deported from Szeged, Transylvania, his hometown, to Auschwitz-Birkenau on May 16, 1944. Elie's childhood is a representative of a traditional Jewish family, where his world revolved around farming, study of religion, community, and God. Elie had 3 siblings, Hilda, Beatrice, and Zipporah, who mean more than anything to him. Nothing was cogent to Elie about his foreordination when he was first being transported, even after being induced with the lies about the destination, until the concise moment that later became one of the inscrutable memories of Elie's, when him and his father, Shlomo, were sent to a work camp and were separated from his sister and mother, Sarah and Zipporah, who were presumably sent to the gas chambers. Elie's inmate number was A-772, which was tattooed on his left arm when he arrived at the Auschwitz camp. Quote, "In the afternoon we were made to line up. 3 prisoners brought the table and some medical instruments. With the left sleeve rolled up, each person passed in front of the table. The 3 veterans, with needles in their hands, engraved the number on our left arm. I became A-772. After that, I had no other name." Page 29. Ethics. There were none. And still to this day, Elie is trying to form, in his mind, what happened that day and the following, to understand the atrocities of the World War II genocide, today known as the Holocaust. They could not take more of a person's identity, abducting their family and later, who you were. He himself, who gave meaning to this term and who experienced the unimaginable, dislikes the term Holocaust, meaning a completely burned sacrifice, as it does not tell the full story of those who experienced the darkness of life, mind, and soul in the Nazi concentration camps. Shlomo's last words were Elie's name, before he was succumbed a few weeks before the US Third Army liberated the camp. Now, Elie Wiesel is a journalist, writer, professor, and a prolific activist, winning the Nobel Prize in 1986, trying to raise awareness about the atrocities of World War II, and dedicates his life to ensure that we will never forget what happened to the Jews, as that would be being indifferent, apathetic, and detached from the perceptibility.
These 2 are identified as slave labor bosses who maltreated, tortured, and killed their workers.
Some voices are still here. I think the souls are here. I think that they listen, they cry, they warn. Look, this is the largest cemetery in recorded history. And what do you see? Nothing.
Locations of the largest concentration and prison camps maintained throughout Germany and occupied Europe.
Quote, "To remain silent and indifferent is the greatest sin of all," quote, speaks Elie Wiesel, symbolizing his views on life and the seeking after dealing with responsibilities of all people fighting hatred, racism, and genocide as a survivor of the Holocaust. Quote, "The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. The opposite of life is not death, it's indifference." Quote, "It is hard to apprehend for those who have not witnessed, and therefore it is a moral obligation to remember and never forget."
We didn't know. That's the main thing. We had no idea what Auschwitz was. I never heard the word Auschwitz. Nobody knew what it meant. Look, had we known, we would have run into the forest.
Elie Wiesel is a true prolific figure and stands for most of our moral understanding of what happened to the Jews in World War II from his perpetual, sempiternal, and abiding novel and memoir, Night. Even for the greatest minds of today, it is hard to understand the enigmatic despair of concentration camps, but it is through the stories of Elie Wiesel that we grasp a notion, empathy, and awareness of the obscure. Quote, pressed up against the others in an effort to keep out the cold, head empty and heavy at the same time, brain a whirlpool of decaying memories. Indifference deadened the spirit, here or elsewhere. What difference did it make? To die today or tomorrow or later? The night was long and never ending. There was no more reason to live, no more reason to struggle. Quote, page 93, penned Elie Wiesel, from the decaying memories that bared witness to the appalling marginalization and his own neglecting to live. How would one feel in such situation, precisely helpless, when bare bodies have to compress to feel slightest warmth of another soul, a mind bewildered out of fear, feeling heavy out of exhaustion, and where the abhor frustrates but deadens the ambience of the innocent men, women, and children, including the newborn? How can, possibly, such atrocity occur? It is immoral, unethical, and frankly horrifying that a human being should be put into such a position of helplessness, annihilation of identity, scarcity of hope, despair, and absence of survival, where silence is the only possible way to apprehend what has happened, even after you being part of this atrocity like Elie Wiesel. The inscrutable conditions are spoken by Elie to understand the situation from a perspective of millions of Jewish children, like himself. Quote, and soon a terrible word was circulating. Selection. We knew what that meant, and SS man would examine us. Whenever he found a weak one, a muscle man we called him, he would write his number down. Good for crematory. The Kapos had orders to kill a certain number of prisoners every day, and every week, selection, merciless selection. Yes, you're lucky. Quote, page 66 to 67. Elie's experience on page 93 similarly captures the helplessness of the prisoners, as it is when one wishes to die more than to be freed, is when one, too, understands that the struggle to forget the horrific memories is boundless, where one's eyes would become, quote, black, nothing but two open wounds, two pits of terror, as stated on page 72 about Akiba Drummer, a victim of selection with no faith left, nor shown a struggle for raising his morale. Helpless, when one is unable to defend himself.
This is the largest cemetery in recorded history. And what do you see? Nothing.
Nothing.
But the cemetery is in our heart.
Men to the left, women to the right. 8 words spoken quietly, indifferently, without emotion. 8 simple, short words. Yet, that was the moment I left my mother. I didn't know that this was the moment in time and the place where I was leaving my mother and Sipora forever.
But we had no idea. No idea. Even afterwards, we had no idea. When some inmates said to us, you see, we said, where are the families? They looked and they said, the flames. We still had no idea.